So with our handsome Mr. Teddy, ready, sir? We're gonna warm up a little bit with, excuse me, some playtime. So when it comes to working with your pup, I know I'm doing a couple little find its too before we get warmed up. I did want to work a little bit with the flirt pole and practicing sort of that on-off switch with the puppy, getting him to sometimes get a little excited and then come back from that, and then work a little bit with his take it and drop it's of the toy. So remember that since he is a youngster, we want to go at his range for comfort for his body and his mind. So right now I'm just warming him up with a couple little find its with some of his kibble. I know the poor guy's been having a sensitive tummy. So I'm just using his like food from home. I know he's on a new food right now just to help settle that tummy. Again, nothing like, parasite wise, because we can always double check before they come to join classes that there's no lovely parasites joining the play. So that's where those fecal tests are so crucial for the puppies. But what I'd like to do is once he's a little bit warmed up, he's doing a real good job. I'm going to go ahead and grab the flirt pole, and we're going to try a little bit with sort of working some of that woohoo and then coming back from it. And I want to start working a little bit with the starting and stopping of the behavior. So that way you can start to get more comfortable with sometimes that excitement and coming back from it. Oh my gosh, chewing is still so optional. So if let's say your puppy gets really excited, I would make sure that play is not done. For example, when your babe is really mentally or physically pooped out, because then the play is more than likely going to get a little too rowdy and even more rambunctious than if they had rested prior. So we're going to go, are you ready? And then we're going to go ahead and say, go get it. And now our toy is going to come alive, and we're going to go ahead and chase that lovely toy around the room. So I want to make sure, he's like, woo, is that we don't make it too hard for him, but also that his running is sort of in a straight line or very big arch. So we don't want to cause any excess strain to joints and ligaments. So remember that a lot of times when your puppies are growing, their bones and ligaments are not fully done growing until about 1.5 to 2 years of age, depending on the breed. And then also the problem with sometimes wild play or play on slippery surfaces, or at times certain puppies can be more prone to having knee issues or hip dysplasia. So if you haven't had the luxury of having their parents known to you or their health records known to you, then of course it's one of those things that I would recommend to check with your veterinarian to see when is my puppy eligible to get their hips and their elbows and knees checked to make sure there's no potential underlying condition that could get worse with certain things. So nice job, sir. So right here, for taking a little breather from the toy, I'm feeding him for taking a little break, but also checking in. So even though the flirt pole is not in action right now, so I'm not making it move around and he's not chasing it, he's still learning that sometimes the toy, even while it's kind of hanging out, could still be a moment to do other skills like check in with the handler, offer maybe another behavior like a sit or eye contact, and then go back into playing once more. If they do turn this into a tuggy time, I recommend to lower the pole and step on the rope. So when they're pulling, they don't relinquish the toy by accident and it kind of slaps you. Ready? So we'll do a little find it. Excuse me. So with the handsome boy, again, benefits of doing a little practice of simmering is then you could go, are you ready? And now the toy could come alive again. He's like, I think my snack just fell out of his mouth. That's okay. He got it. Woohoo. Wild man. Making turns are hard, so I keep it really easy. Good job. Because he's kind of like a big moose. So, oh my gosh, what a good catch. I know the rope just slapped the pole. Madness. So remember that the more we do some puppy-centric or dog-centric play or exercises, the more fulfilled and softer your puppy will be in our weird human world, like I mentioned a little earlier when I was chatting about Mr. S too. So a lot of times these puppy things that we're having a hard time with tend to be a lot of times behavior is magnified, especially when they're overtired. So if your puppy is immensely mouthy, they're going to be really crazy mouthy when it comes to when they're really pooped out. So right here, we're just doing a little find it. Getting to relinquish the toy is not the end of the game or something negative, but letting go had some value. And they might say, are you ready? Go get it. He's like, I've caught him. Good job. Nice catch. So If, for example, you don't have the greatest flooring or there's ice or the traction is not as great, I would highly recommend, once the house training is getting a little bit better, I would still recommend runners in the home if your puppy tends to be on mostly hardwood or tile, because especially for a bigger dog or a dog that is again heavier, you're going to have a lot more strain on the joints, especially even if they're a gangly baby. And you want to be careful with how they're using their bodies on those slippery surfaces. So it's almost like us learning how to do anything, but on an ice skating rink, it's kind of, you're always compensating and worried about the slip or the jostle. So I would be very careful with where he's doing things and what he looks like when practicing. So if you're finding he gets excited and he runs and falls on the tile or for example, the flooring, then that would be something where I'd be very cautious as to letting him maybe loose in that bubble and maybe keep a leash on to help him not make a mistake like hurting himself. So because for a lot of puppies, they'll just go and they won't realize that something could cause harm. But for some puppies, I know, like we have mentioned, for some of the dogs, there have been moments where like there's a fluxating patella, which is where the kneecap pops out. And then for some puppies, that can cause a lot of discomfort and pain, but also wear and tear on the wrong sides of the joint area. And it can cause other ligament issues too. He's just tanking up a little bit on some water. Oh my gosh, what a good job. He's like, I was so thirsty. What a good job. Nice catch. So when doing some play, you could always rock, let's say if the flirt pole is something you can't do because you're got a whole bunch of snow or there's ice in your yard or it's turning into mud, which again, the mud is also very slippery. You may find doing handheld tuggies and toys in the home to be a little bit of a safer venue. He's too cute though. So right here, I might go drop it. He's like, oh, there's a hairball. That's just from the toy. Good job. So even if you technically let go because you got distracted by a little fluff, that would still be a great moment to feed for the relinquishing of the thing. So you ready? So we might do a little sit. Yes, nice job. Two, by accident, I noticed that when I got you the harness, I grabbed the wrong size. So it still fit him for now, but he's going to outgrow that one very soon. So I just upgraded you guys to the bigger one. It's the same price, so who cares? But this one, for example, has a whole bunch more length around his tummy as well. So right now, this one should finish or fit until he's probably close to being done growing. So at least you'll have a little bit longer time frame. The other one, by accident, we had ordered some 1-inch ones, but they were shorter length, and I didn't realize I grabbed that one by mistake because normally I don't have those ones in my inventory, but it was a hiccup. So, but for this one should last him quite some time before he maybe outgrows it into adulthood. So I might go, you ready? Go get it. Wild boy. Nice job. So as he's grabbing and catching, oh, he's like, hold on, we lost a snack. Good job. He's got to find all the morsels. Ready? We'll do a little playing again. You're going to go get it. Wild man. So you want to make sure that, again, when he's practicing, it's just not too intense. So he caught the critter. If he's going to do some shaking, again, I like to step on the pole so he's not yanking it and pulling and then it slaps me. You know, up here would not be so much nicer than down low is much better. So if you do find that you want to get a flirt pole, there's all different brands out there. So it's called a flirt, like to flirt and a pole. Don't ask me why. I have no idea. Probably should research that one day. But the flirt pole is a really great option, and it could be a great venue for chasing, biting, grabbing, you know, and again, natural doggy behavior, but on an appropriate outlet. Good job. So maybe we'll take a little break from this one. He's like, no, I'm not done. So we'll do a little bit again with our take it and drop it. Ready? Drop. Yes, nice work. So if let's say he's really excited about the toy, remember sometimes creating distance to be very helpful. So if your puppy can't handle a situation because their excitement is too high or their confusion is maybe, you know, rocking, sometimes doing those find its to create some distance is a great way to get them to take a little breather and move away so you can help them take a break from that toy. So it's really pretty. So he's just finding all his little crumbs. Yum, yum, yum. So, but I want to see if we can now work a little bit with maybe some of his place behaviors again. So I'm just going to grab the cot. I have it right over here. And we'll try a little bit with working, going to our spot again, because he's been getting pretty comfortable with the dog bed. He's like, lady, I'm ready. Here, let me just put it down first. He's like, and I'm helping. Good job. So you may find that he starts to get more comfortable with certain skills here. I know I mentioned earlier for Mr. B2 is that the generalization of the skills from this venue to home to outside to a new environment, that's going to take a lot of good practice and reps, but we want to make sure it's still within our puppy's comfort range. So if your babe is trying something new and everything has gone out the window, even their food drive has gone away, then in that situation, you're no longer actually learning and socializing, but instead flooding and potentially creating negative associations or helping your puppy rehearse the things you really don't want them to get good at. So always think to yourselves, if I don't really think the puppy's doing pretty well or is handling the situation well, what could I do differently to make sure the puppy is learning what to keep doing into adulthood? So remember, puppies will grow into behavior, not typically grow out of behavior. So this is where we want to make sure that whatever they're rehearsing are the things we want them to get really good at. So right here, yes. So I didn't apply my stay. I'm just feeding this handsome guy for going and placing on his target mat. He's really doing a very nice job. And then I might just add a little bit of distraction, so some wiggles. He's like, guys, I am pooped out. But you may find too for him, since he's going to be such a large boy, is to having these raised cots can be very nice for their joints as well. It takes a lot of pressure off of their body if they're laying flat on the floor, which some of them still prefer because it's cooler. You may find, though, the raised cots to be very beneficial for him as he's growing too, but no pressure. And there's a slew of different brands out there. So some can be as cheap as like $20-something to like hundreds of dollars. So you can always feel it out and see which brand or which sizing might be appropriate for you guys if you're ever checking them out. So right now we're just working a little bit with the stay position or the beginning stages of stay. I didn't technically apply it. He's like, oh, this bed smells delicious. I love it when he puts his little face onto his gigantic feet. His jowls fall over his little legs. It just kills me. It's a very handsome monkey. And I don't know if you got him through a rescue or a personal home situation, whichever, which is all fine. But I wasn't sure if you're in contact with either the breeder or with the litter. Because I know with some rescues, if they have a litter, they'll sometimes have like a page for the puppies so they can stay in contact with each other and the families. And then you can kind of see how everybody's progressing and doing as they're changing and developing. Nice. This is really pretty with Mr. T. And to you guys, I know it doesn't seem like a big deal at times to just have your puppy hanging out. But I feel like this is one of the most underrated puppy skills because a lot of people tend to call me being like, oh my gosh, my puppy won't do this, or they keep doing that and they keep doing this. And a lot of times, yes, the puppies may have not had the greatest start and there's a lot of confusion from both ends. But other times it could also be that the puppy was always constantly like occupied with something. And then when you finally don't have the time or the ability or the moment to do those things every single day, the puppies then struggle. So I like to also practice having off days or softer down days, because if it's every day, go, go, go to try to burn out the puppy, you may be creating the triathlon athlete that you'll never want to keep up with. So don't forget to work the mental aspect of your puppy just as much as you might sometimes the physical. But for a lot of puppies, learning how to go and relax is very challenging. So we do want to teach some of this kind of just hanging out and vegging as well. It's a very important life skill. Yes. He's going to eventually outgrow this cot, but then I have one that's a little bit bigger, so maybe he'll be okay for a little bit longer. Yes. 2, no pressure whatsoever, for the beautiful men. I did last night add another round of the doggy day school. I know the following one is full, and I believe the one after that might be, but either way, I added another round because the other 2 programs were already booked. So if you're thinking about potentially joining again, and if not, that's no problem whatsoever. You may want to continue with other group classes as well where you're part of the routine. So I know that I have a puppy graduate program coming up soon, which again would be like level number 2. So if you're thinking about continuing with Mr. T, for example, he could go into the puppy graduate program if you were thinking about going into level 2 after the puppy kindergarten classes. This is beautiful. What a brilliant man. So like, let's say he's doing a really nice job with sort of working this beginning stages of stay. You could apply it and sort of tell him to stay. But remember, if you repeat yourself, then you might be losing out on the meaning behind the word. So I like to sometimes also just maybe help them practice the physical aspect of it. And then you start to throw in your verbal or visual hand signals. Nice. So again, I'm going to go yes and feed this handsome man. But yeah, I'm glad I figured out that harness. I'm sorry that I sold you the wrong one size-wise, but now he should be good to go. So now again, I'm just making some noises. Oh my goodness, doing such a great job. He's getting nice and tired. I bet the boys go home winded. So I'm just gonna make some noises, move some gear around. And it looks like I'm gonna have to order some more harnesses because they're getting a little bit low for some of the different patterns. The bling bone seems to be very popular this time around. I'm getting real low on those bad boys. This is really pretty. So let's say we want to end this practice of going to the bed, which of course, perfect. He saw a crumb that we dropped. But let's say we were going to end it. We'd feed the last little rep for being on that spot. He's like, oh, look, the crumbs that fell under my armpit and under his belly. So then from there, right here, I'm going to feed him though for this placement real quick because he did such a nice job. So, but you want to think about feeding for being in the stay, not for coming out of it. So think about stay again, like freeze tag with room service. You're trying to build up value in being stationary, and that stationary is what gives you all of these great paychecks. If your puppy is also being called from the stay, the problem with that is then leaving the stay has a lot of great value too, and then they won't know which one you prefer and might start to guess which one you'd rather. So I like to, for example, good job, yes, nice down. So I like to, for example, have my stay there until I come to get you. So I always have to go retrieve my dog when they're in a stay, where with the wait, they're holding back and then they're going to get called to you or released to go grab something. And then what's being reinforced is the movement. So stay is for stationary or statue, and then sort of wait would be wait until called and there's movement involved. So right here, we would rock our stay, and then maybe from here, I might add a little bit of wiggle like I did a little earlier. He says, boy, I'm getting all hot. He says, I'm so tired. But it's also, I have the heat on because I get cold, and of course all the men have very nice fluffy coats. So right here, if I lose him, ready, Tenny, bed. Yes, oh, watch out, it ends there. He's like, guys, the end of the bed was right there. So we can't all be super smooth, you know, sometimes we're a little awkward. So if he's getting a little bitey, he's like, oh, poop bags taste great too. So we might try for this little down. He's like, oh, my brain melted. Down. He's like, what if you want toesies? Right there, yes. Gorgeous. What a brilliant boy. So if your puppy's getting especially mouthy, I know we've discussed this heavily, but remember that a mouthy babe tends to be, I'm overtired, overwhelmed, stressed, or too jazzed. So either way, it's a big emotion and we need to help them through it. So right here, we're feeding for being in our place, working this little stay. Mr. S says he would like to come back out and do some more WrestleMania. Nice. I know, poor Mr. B, he's done a couple little haze to the babies, but because his little leg's a little sore, I've been trying to keep him from going and romping with all the men today. Yes. Such a smart boy. So before I were to lose my puppy, so like let's say he's getting tired, I'm going to go back and feed him his last little rep for holding this gorgeous stay. And then once he's done having his little paycheck for his working of staying stationary, I'm going to say all done, or you could do release, free time, all set, party, whatever slogan makes sense. I do stay away from okay, because then what I've seen people do is they release the dog with an okay for coming when called. They release the dog from a stay with an okay. They release the dog to go grab something with an okay. And the problem with that is then okay equals a lot of different things, but then the slogans you had for those different exercises are now either have multiple words for the one behavior, like okay replaces recall. So now what happens if you say okay versus recall? Will they be sort of understanding of what you're asking? So I would recommend to have certain slogans for certain behaviors. And I'm blabbing, so I'm just feeding him a little bit more. So make sure that if, let's say, you're working a wait and you want the dog to come to you, as opposed to releasing with okay, feed for example, the release when you say his name and then come. So that way, no matter what you're doing, recall word always equals come when called, and you're not replacing come with many other words. And then that's where it gets really confusing for a lot of the dogs. So right here, he's going to finish up his little tidbit. That was very nice. I'm going to say all done. And if he likes a little bit of some scratches or some little pats, he's like, or maybe he'd like to wrestle. I'm going to see if I can get him up. Nice. And then for breaking, he gets no reinforcement for breaking, but maybe he's a little tired. So maybe we'll do a couple little find its to give him a chance to stretch his legs again. So because for a lot of the puppies, if they're not able to get up and take a little breeze, like, oh my gosh, she got new toys. How do those bad boys look? Pretty nice. He's like, I'd like to have one of everything. So, but if your babe doesn't get a chance to take a break from being stationary, they're probably going to have a harder time holding it. So shorter reps are better. So it's more intervals with more reinforcement for that skill. And then you might throw in a few moments, yes, where your puppy gets to wiggle, and wiggling helps him feel more comfortable to then lay down again once more. Yes, nice. So we can see how he's starting to hone in, target the cot, and then really start to work nicely with vegging, which is hard for babies. Oh, and if he says the bed seems like a great thing to chew on because his teeth are feeling a little bit funky, that could be a moment where you could do a little bit of two items. So you could have a chew toy on the cot working a bit with this place behavior, but you give him a venue on what to chew other than, let's say, the dog bed, or he's going for the harness, or he might be biting his leash, or whatever it might be. So maybe what I'll do is we'll feed him one more rep, give him a little breather, but I want to grab him a little chew toy so he doesn't feel the need to nibble on the bed per se. So ready? We're going to say all done. He's like, oh my gosh, I smell snacks under here. He's too cute. His little furry face. Ready? So we'll get off our cot. Nice job. So I'm going to grab a little chew toy real fast for him, and then we'll work a little bit more with that place behavior. He says, don't forget about me. He's following me. Here, we'll maybe bring this one over for us. So we'll bring our handsome guy. Sorry about the running out of camera shot. Ready, bed. And then we might try again for that. He's like, poop bags. Ready? Well, he's like, they do look delicious. I know. But here we're going to get this one. So we'll do a little sitting. And then we're going to go into our little down. Nice. And then we'll see if we can offer a lovely chew item. So a lot of times I'm going to fix my poop bags. They're not quite as delicious looking sticking out right now. There we go. A little bit less intriguing. So you'll see that I was starting to notice that he was getting tired, which then tends to equal I need something to occupy my mouth. Sorry about fixing the mic for a second. So you may find for your beauty is having novel chew items to rotate through will be really, really helpful. So what a lot of folks do by mistake is they have a bucket worth of dog toys and they have all of them out all day for days on end. And then you step into the environment, or your little one steps in, or the other dog, or whatever it might be. And now because they're the novel thing, the puppy goes right for them as the novel chew or plaything. So I find it can be really helpful to rotate through different types of textured chew items that you find appropriate for your puppy. So if there's certain things you've never tried, or there's things you're worried about, don't use them. But always make sure, that the toys or chews are big enough. So you normally can't have harm happen with a bigger item. You can, though, with smaller items. So the problem with a small toy is it could become a choking hazard, or for some puppies, dogs is around his size and bigger can sadly, while running, swallow by mistake a tennis ball. So there are moments where dogs do by mistake have a tennis ball go down their throat. And it's in a lot of those situations, it's life ending. So I'm not trying to scare anybody, but a lot of times, ready, sir? The toys or chews that we pick when they're little, they may outgrow them. Or, for example, what can happen is their chewing or gnawing style changes. So when they're itty bitties, he's like, Lee, I'm exhausted. So when they're itty bitties, You're gonna sit on the bed. Oh, good, you missed it. You may find that their chewing is pretty intense, but because they've got those baby piranha teeth, it's not quite as damaging for some products as they are for others. But then as they mature, maybe their chew style sort of changes because they've got their adult teeth in. And now the way they chew on something could be harder or softer depending. So I always recommend keep an eye on your items, maybe have between 3 to 5 varieties available and rotate through different types of things throughout the week. But if let's say your puppy was with this toy for days on end and now you step in the environment and you want the puppy to do something else, it could be very hard for them to choose that toy when your boots or your strings or your laces are cooler from the puppy's perspective. So having the novel thing come in and choose that over you could be a much better option. Here, you want to do a little find out on your bed? So, but for practice at home, I would highly recommend make sure he's still getting enough rest. So even though he's turning into a big boy, he's still a baby. And even when he is around 8 or 9 months, again, remember, he's still a teenager. Excuse me. So for a lot of these babes, as they're struggling, it's more than likely depending on the different age group they're in, and what might be normal for that particular age group might be a little harder for us for other situations we're trying to work with the puppies with. So just always think to yourselves, am I setting up my puppy for success? Or am I by accident maybe working skills or environments that are too challenging for them to be successful? And if so, what can we do instead to help the puppy do well in those dynamics? So sometimes it might be building up to those skills versus assuming the puppy's going to do well and just doing it anyway. So remember, flooding is not going to help your puppy get over something. It's probably going to cause the phobias or the reactivity we're trying to avoid in the first place. So you really do want to be careful with how you're teaching or exposing, like I mentioned a little earlier for some of the other boys. So, but we'll give Mr. T a little break. He's been doing a really great job, and so have the other handsome men. But if any questions, concerns, or whatever difficulties pop up, do feel free to check in. But remember, I wouldn't go ahead and, okay, puppyhood's been going great, let's stop. And then again, here comes adolescence like a freight train. And then you let me know, hey, by the way, these things have been not going super hot. You may want to keep the momentum going for now, than to pause now and hope they continue doing well. Because I see it a lot where puppies are doing great in puppy class. People feel like, oh my gosh, this is going great. We've got things under wraps. It's kind of feeling comfortable. And then all of a sudden adolescence hits and they're like, the dog is not listening. He's not responding to everything we worked on. He is now becoming reactive or whatever it might be. So getting big emotions and hard to come back from it. Remember, reactivity does not always have to be aggression or fear-based, or reactivity in the sense of barking and lunging out of aggression. It can very easily be frustration, boredom. Sometimes certain breeds have certain tendencies, like herding groups tend to run into reactivity because things that move or things that are novel or things that would trigger them to go check those things out or make them move. So there's going to be times where, because of your puppy's genetics, because of their life experiences or lack thereof, you're going to get different behaviors along those different age groups. So just because your puppies are doing well now does not mean they feel completely comfortable with everything down the road. It just means that at this life stage, those things that they see don't seem overwhelming for now, but could very easily change as they hit adolescence. So this is where things don't just happen out of nowhere. There's typically reasons and behavior behind the symptoms. So, but Mr. T did a very good job. He's like, oh, thank goodness. So we'll give him a little breather, but very impressive work for all the beauties. And we'll call it a day for him and give him a little rest because he says he's tired.